Good morning. It's Saturday. I was watching Atriox's video talking about the acqui-hire, as they're calling it, of the founder from Scale AI, and it reminded me of a conversation that I've been having a few times with people that I sort of wanted to reiterate here in case it resonated with anybody. Uh, my proposition is that the business model that Scale AI is working under is, not sustainable. And they're one of the first few companies to come out as a data labeling first organization. And as you guys know from my interests, I love the idea, and I've always been pushing that the limitation, the elephant in the room, is the lack of data curation and data fusion, not the availability of the models and the compute and the techniques. So when I talked about when the bubble would pop, it would be when we start to lose the ability to get that data easily. The application spaces start to decrease because they realize they're not profitable. And then you have this slow period of, okay, we've run out of valuable data. Now we need to figure out what's the right kind of data, how to curate it, and so on. But I don't want to rant. I just wanted to get some random thoughts out for morning, coffee. And usually my brain doesn't work too great right when I wake up, so it's a good exercise. Basically, from my understanding of what they're doing, is whether it be like a programming task or image labeling or like radar labeling or whatever, they are primarily human in the loop intervention. So they are giving a person the task or the image, and they're saying, hey, label this, comment this, whatever. I'm sure that they are also exploring some intermediary automated methodologies as well. But generally, the concern that I have with this kind of technique is generally like threefold. So the first is data availability, right? So I've talked about data silos. To get access to that, you have to buy that silo or collaborate with that silo. So we'll put that aside because it's kind of a problem no matter what, but that's number one. Number two is the data being labeled is often purpose built or purposely chosen for that task, or it's available for that task. And it sort of leaves out the nuance that connects unique circumstances, those manifold properties, right? And the third thing is that the amount of data and the amount of labeling, the amount of context that's needed is so vast and will continue to grow so exponentially that no human in the loop process is sufficient. And so I don't know if they're thinking about this, but maybe this is my opportunity to be like, hey, you guys should be thinking about this. I want to point back to the manifold latent space problem, because if you take all kinds of data, every kind of mode of data, the amount of money that it would take to pay a person with the expertise necessary to interconnect the manifold properties between that data and ensure that context is accurate, individually, I think is far greater than the amount of investment that would be required to develop the model that, in a self-supervised way, will learn the structure of data such that it can then be coordinated and learned upon more easily. So, I'm trying to speak generally, but now it's just turning into algo speak, essentially. If you try to take images and radar and SAR and text and audio and blah and pay somebody to go and individually interface with it to label it, and you do that a billion times over, you have all of this information and context about all of these individual situations, but now you have to coordinate them across domains. And it seems like a trivial task, but the kind of scale that I want machine learning methods and nascent AI to grow to entails removing people from that process. The only way to remove people from that process is to be assured that you can cluster data by its domain and then sort it, or you could say shift it so that its dimensional axes are aligned. And then you have a universal latent space to work within, to train within. Some kinds of data can't be easily distilled to one universal latent space without losing core information. And on the flip side, other things you distill to a universal latent space that has the dimensionality to accommodate this data set. Well, now you've overfit that data set, right? So there's a vastly difficult technical issue here, a methodology here that I've been thinking about and working on. But I think if you have people, if you have money, if you're Meta, if you have $15 billion to throw at experts, then you shouldn't be buying out companies that do manual data labeling, right? Google and all sorts of other large organizations have been doing this for decades, and they've done a good job of building out a business model that does that. So I remember watching a video. I can't remember if it was like CNN or something about people in another country who's they were like really happy to have labeling of images for like Google Maps or something as a job, and this was like well before GPT. And so I know that it's easy to be the first company to say, oh, we're going to solve your data labeling problems. And if you're the company looking for the data, it's easy to jump at it and be like, oh, they're going to do it. But if you think about this problem for the long term, you are going to consolidate what you can have access to into your silo. And you're going to have to manually pay people to constantly maintain relevancy of that data set to modern society and modern interpretation, right? And then take it even further, you're now going to have to, if you even do label that data, figure out a way to get all of it into one place where it is easily interfaceable by a model or by a person, right? So even if you have infinitely accessible data, right? So like you have it perfectly well labeled, right? So they talk about, they do labeling, right? But they also do curation. So they have this search engine and this database where you can look for different class structures and things like that. Okay, so they are definitely thinking about ways to improve my experience as a person needing to curate data, right? But I think that the next big paradigm for a company like this is to develop manifold latent spaces, standardize them, right? And build up collaborations across industries and across companies and say, hey, we have this way that you can encode your data in, that all of the data of all different formats, of all different manifolds can all be encoded in. And then we have one format that we can all work under. All of our weights can be shared. And there's a lot that you can do once you not only standardize the encoding space, but you ensure the encoding space is universal. Because now you are no longer having to individually curate. So my goal is to eliminate the process of manual data fusion and data curation, right? I literally want to eliminate the need for this entire company, right? Now, obviously that's never going to happen. There's always going to be a degree of intervention required. But if you are scale AI right now, if you're throwing billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, and you're not thinking about how to solve this problem for the long term, permanently, well, I graduated in the fall and I'm looking for a job, so hit me up.